I just launched the Barzell Group webinar. Welcome, welcome. We have some folks that are jumping in. Welcome to the webinar today. Hope that your day is as beautiful as mine is here in sunny Vermont. I'd love to say sunny Vermont all the time, but can't quite say it all the time. But certainly good to meet you guys that are coming in. We're just going to wait a few moments after 12 so that we can begin. Good to see everyone. The chat is live. If you would like to um, introduce yourself, you can, but you don't have to. Again, if you want to ask questions along the way, I'll remind everyone in just a few moments, but the webinar chat is live, so you can ask questions along the way. We're going to have a time, even at the very end, where we connect with folks and answer questions you guys might have. All right. So. Today's topic, you don't actually have a strategic plan. I know you can push back on that a little bit too. Yeah, I have a plan. I got a plan. Well, what does it really mean to have a good plan? We're going to talk about that today. All right, thanks for joining in. Some more folks just joined in. Glad to see you guys. We're gonna wait just a few more moments. Again, the chat should be live. You should be able to chat in there. Let me throw it in there. Welcome all. Can you put in the chat if you can see, says to host and to panelists? I hope that I have that setting right on Zoom. I think that I do. If, let's see. I might not be able to change that setting if I don't have that because I don't see you guys chatting on there. Throw in a comment in the chat. Throw in a comment in the chat if you can. If it is closed, my apologies. Let me look at the settings really quick. Let's see here. All right, I don't see it. My apologies. It might be closed, gang, and that is my apologies. On the last webinar that we did, I had it open, but I do not see that. Um, I don't see that. So my apologies, gang. All right, so the chat, you can see what I am saying, but you guys cannot send anything back. By the way, so if you have any questions, I would love to hear from you. Jason at barzellgroup.com. I'll share my information at the very, very end of our webinar. Jason at barzellgroup.com. Would love to hear from you. You guys have any questions? Again, apologies about the chat not being live. I thought it was, but it just says for panelists and hosts. And so you guys are not seeing this. So if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Again, my name is Jason, and I am an owner of the Barzell Group Business and Leadership Guides. We love business, we love organization, we love leadership. And like you, we really love making progress. Today's topic is called You Don't Actually Have a Strategic Plan, and your team knows it. Now, something about you today said, I got to sign up for this webinar. I don't know what made you sign up for the webinar, what made you showed up for the webinar. But first of all, thank you for being here. It tells me that it's important to you. It tells me that making progress is important to you. And it also tells me that you want to make sure your plan sticks. Everyone relates to having a plan and it not going well. Everyone also relates to being able to show up sometimes and there not being a plan. Sometimes there's nothing more frustrating than actually not having a plan. So whether you don't have a plan and it doesn't go well, or you have a plan and it doesn't go well, or you have a plan and it does go well, we all want to make progress. We all want to get better at this. There's a sense that strategic planning can profoundly change you. It can profoundly change your team. And it can profoundly change the organization that you lead, whether you're the CEO or COO, or you're a manager in the organization, or you lead a team within a team. You all want a plan and you all want to move forward. But then there's a sense of not speaking to the manager or the owner, but going to employees and everyone not being on the same page. And so the team sometimes recognizes what the leader doesn't. And the leader, flip the tables, also recognize certain things that the team leaders don't, or that the followers don't, that the employees don't. So, what does it look like to be fully aligned across the board? What does it look like to have a strategic plan and it actually work? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So, thank you for being here. We're going to dive right in. Again, apologies on the Q&A not being live, but I know to change that setting in Zoom, I actually have to end the webinar, and I'm not going to do that. I already tried to look at that, but I'm going to share my screen with you. We're going to talk about strategic planning today, and we're going to talk about how you may think you have a plan, but maybe you don't have a plan. So what does this really look like? So I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to dive into our topic today. And so here we go. We are the Barzell Group, and we are business and leadership guides. Me, my partner Jay, all of our guides you'll see on our website. We love coming alongside teams. We love coming alongside organizations. We have some sharp women, some sharp men that love to be iron sharpening iron. Barzell is Hebrew for that. Iron sharpens iron, as the Jewish proverb teaches us that every leader needs a leader to sharpen them. Every coach needs a coach to sharpen them. In fact, and you find someone at the top of their game, literally, if you go to football, Tom Brady, how many coaches did he have? Right, you find anybody, pick anybody in any field at the top of their game, and they're surrounded by great men and women that are helping them and sharpening them. And so we're going to dive in. We want to be a sharpening tool for you today, and I really hope that this is. So you don't actually have a strategic plan. Maybe you got a plan. Maybe it's not strategic and your team knows it. So how do we address this? How do we make sure we have a plan, it's achievable, and we actually make progress? Everyone wants a plan, and everyone wants to make sure that plan works. There are four elements that will mislead you in strategic planning. That's where we're going today. The four elements that will mislead you in strategic planning. Not only are we going to talk about these elements and how they are misleading in strategic planning, but we're going to tackle some solutions to the problem. You didn't show up today just to hear about problems. You showed up because you want solutions to your problems, and so do I. We don't want an employee to come to us with a problem without a solution, right? There's four elements. And so here's element number one. You might think you have a plan because you have clarity. You might think you have a plan because you have clarity. I have so many stories, and it was actually tough for me to choose some of the illustrations and stories today because I just have so many of these stories where you sit down with a small business owner or you sit down with a nonprofit leader. I was with a nonprofit team last night and I ask these questions. And there's a sense of direction and clarity that they have. But when we come alongside teams and organizations, you start talking to different people and different teams. And the clarity that I heard from the owner is not the clarity that I'm hearing from the employees. What's the vision and the direction? Oh, an owner can often articulate, man, I want to do this. I want to go here. Here's what we're about. And if I ask those same questions to employees, it's not clear. Well, just because you have a plan as a business leader or manager or owner doesn't mean that you have clarity. But sometimes you do have clarity, like you do have clarity, but it doesn't mean that it's clear to everyone. So you might think you have a plan because it's clear. What's clear in your head is not often clear to your customers. What's clear in your head is not often clear to your team. This is a picture of a friend of mine in Scotland, and I'm actually somewhere in the woods in front of him. Okay, this guy's name is Justin. This is a picture from Cullen Beach to Finlater Castle on the North Sea, on the northern edge of Scotland. So I took a group, my wife and I, and we spent about 10 days in Scotland just a few months ago. And I don't know if you're a hiker, or as they would call it in Scotland, a walk. Hey, how was your walk today? Now, being an American, when they say, how was your walk? I'm like, "Oh, I didn't do a walk. Okay, you walk on sidewalks, you walk in the mall. I did a hike. But hey, how was your walk today? There's a great app if you're a hiker called All Trails. I believe it's the best well-known app for trails. And so before you go on a hike, especially if there's no GPS signal, you want to download the All Trails trail. So I did this. I did my homework on Cullen Beach to Fenlatter Castle. It's about a 6 mile, as they would say, walk, and I would say a 6 mile hike. Well, we get right here to this edge. I'm like, oh, we're about to go down to Cullen Beach. We're about to enter, like, we're just gonna walk down, and the elevation you can't quite see in this picture is pretty significant from there over the next quarter mile. Well, the more that we walk from where Justin is to the beach, the more we absolutely get lost. The woods and the brush that we entered was so high, you only knew where the ocean was because of the sound. And I never thought from where Justin is right there to the coast that we could get lost. But I can guarantee you, in this quarter mile, we got so disillusioned and so turned around. The only hope that I had was using my GPS. And I even got turned around because I'm taking my phone. I'm like, which way do I go? Which way do I go? Now let me tell you, I had a plan and it was clear. I got GPS. I know it's let's say 3.1 miles from Cullen Beach to the castle, and then 3.1 miles from the castle back to Cullen Beach. Like I had a plan. It was clear. I knew that I'm going. And all of a sudden, in the snap of a finger, we are absolutely lost. In fact, I had some pictures of that hike in that moment, but all you would see is green. I mean, the brush was like 10 feet tall. I couldn't even see where the sun was to get orientation of north and south and east and west. The only way out was to listen to the ocean and actually follow the GPS. Now, the entire hike, they on all trails, they rate them as easy to medium to moderate to hard to extremely hard. Well, this one was rated, whatever the rating is, extremely hard. And most of the hike, I said, this is not hard at all. This is why it was hard. We had a plan, we had clarity, we knew the distance, we knew what time we were leaving, we knew what time we would get there. We had our food, we had our fuel, we had our snacks. Everything was good. In the snap of a finger, we were completely lost, completely turned around. Thankfully, the completely lost was only like 20 minutes. I mean, we got turned around. There were multiple trails, go left, go right. So disoriented. Just because you have a plan doesn't mean it's always going to work out. And it doesn't mean that you know what's coming. We've all left a meeting with a good plan that never got accomplished. We all left a meeting with a good plan with the wrong assumptions. We all left a meeting with a good plan and then somebody got fired. And then COVID happened. I mean, fill in the blank, right? You never know what's going to hit the fan. So, what does it look like to pivot? This is just a kind of a general principle. Just because you have clarity, just because you have clarity doesn't mean it's going to work. And you might think you have a plan because you have clarity, but then this happens. You get turned around. So what do you do? What do you do at the end? I'm going to share a few quick steps that will always allow us to be able to pivot when someone loses their job, right? When someone quits. So when you get turned around in the woods or when COVID happens, there are some principles around planning. I want to make sure today, in this hour, that you leave with, and you can leave with these principles. So stay tuned. Here we go. Even when you think the path is clear, it's not sometimes, is it? Even when we think the path is clear, it's not. So, how do we pivot? How do we react? How do we respond? All right, element number two, think about this. You might think you have a plan because you have goals. One of the biggest confusing things in organizational life is the distinction between a plan and a goal. Now, some of that's obvious, isn't it? Just because you have a goal doesn't mean you have a plan to get that goal. But when I start talking to organizations and leaders and teams, I'm like, well, tell me about what you want to accomplish. And they say, here's what we're going to do. I'm like, oh, I asked them about their goals and their vision and their dreams, and they start telling me the plan. But I'm like, what does it look like down the road? They start describing the steps. And sometimes it's the opposite. Flip that. Sometimes you start talking about your dreams and your goals and your vision. You start talking about what you desire for tomorrow. But then you say, well, what are your steps? What do you want to accomplish? And then they don't know. There's such confusion because you can have a plan with no goal, and you can have a goal with no plan. But the best, most effective, and efficient organizations, they have clarity of a goal and clarity of the plan to achieve that goal. Now, can you help me out here? You may have signed up for this webinar And you might hear that and you go, duh, because that's not new. You have a goal and then you have a plan to reach the goal. Isn't that so obvious? Start asking the people that you work with what their goals are, and then start asking them about their plans. You you may probably be sadly disappointed if you're looking for clarity because not a lot of people have clarity. Remember, one of the first challenges is just because you have a plan doesn't mean it's clear. Just because you have clarity doesn't mean you have a plan. But then you start talking about goals and you're like, oh, what's the plan? Very, very seldom do I hear something where I'm like, that's crystal clear. The goal is crystal clear. The plan is crystal clear. And everyone's on the same page. Man, it makes it sound easy, but it's so difficult. So I love endurance sports. I'm an endurance athlete. That's a hobby of mine. It's taught me a lot, and so I'm going to share a few illustrations from this world. So this is the Ironman village um, of Ironman Maryland, and Ironman Maryland was something that me and my buddies. That's me on the left. That's my buddy Matthew on the right. Ironman Maryland was fun. But I could have put the picture here of the Ironman finish line because there are a lot of people that say, "Hey, I want to accomplish an Ironman." An Ironman is a triathlon that has three distinct sports in one activity, right? Swim, bike, run. The swim of a full distance is a 2.4 mile swim, a 112-mile cycle, and then you run a marathon, 26.2. They have the half distance as well. And of course, in triathlon world, there's sprint, Olympic, distances and a half Ironman and then a full distance triathlon. Many people want to get to the finish line. This is the introduction to the Ironman Village, not the Ironman finish line, but many people want to get to the finish line. But to get to the finish line, which is the goal is to finish, say that you did it, put the medal around your neck, and say, at the end of the line, I'm an Ironman. In fact, the announcers goes, Jason Hodges from Dedham, Massachusetts, where I used to live. You are an Iron Man. That's the goal. That's the vision. And you can't get there unless you have a plan. So next year, me and this same guy and three other buddies are doing Ironman California in Sacramento. And one of our buddies, we finally convinced him to do an Ironman. And what is he asking about? Because he's a great athlete. He is a physical trainer. He is in shape, especially for his age in his mid 40s. And he's asking the questions, how do I? What do I? Should I do this? Should I do that? On the picture on the right there is definitely not Maryland. Okay, that is a picture in Rhode Island when I did a challenge of 6 consecutive Ironmans. And the reason I did 6 consecutive Ironmans in 6 days was to raise money for nonprofits and church leaders in New England. So I did that several years ago. I won't go into the details, but let me just tell you by way of illustration, zero possibility to actually get to the finish line without a plan. Zero. Like it's this isn't doing like a 1 mile run. We're talking 140. And the picture on the right was day one out of doing that, a challenge that I did for 6 days in a row. Can I tell you this? I only use this illustration, not a business illustration, because of the physical human body. The physical human body of running a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, a marathon, a half Ironman, or a full distance Ironman, or running 100 miles, running 200 miles for ultra endurance athletes, or doing 6 days in a row. Impossible, impossible without a really good plan. Because if your hydration suffers, you won't finish. If your nutrition is not right and dealed in, you won't finish. It's impossible. Now look at your team, look at your organization. I'm going to tell you this, you will not finish without a good plan that you execute. It's just not going to happen. It's not. It's not. Now, I'm not saying you're not making progress. We're going to talk about that next. I'm not saying that you're not busy. I'm not saying you don't have big goals and big dreams, but the big goal and the big dream is impossible without a plan. I could go into a lot of stories, but there are some fatal mistakes that I have made in this sport. One of them was Ironman Switzerland 2 years ago when I wanted to save $2,000 instead of flying my bike halfway across the world and housing it in a facility. I rented a bike. Fatal mistake. I knew it was a bad idea. Halfway through the race, I got completely numb because I rented a bike. It wasn't my bike. I wasn't comfortable on the saddle. I wasn't comfortable on the actual cycle, the actual machine itself, the actual bike. And 3 hours into the cycle, I was completely numb from hips down. And I made a fatal mistake because my plan was the wrong plan. It was the only DNF did not finish that I've ever done. I have traveled halfway across the world, and because I did not have a good plan, I did not see my goal accomplished. It's so obvious, isn't it? And sometimes, let me tell you this, we can get away with not having a good plan. You can get away with, let's say, running a 5K without a good plan. There are some things in your business you can do without a good plan. You can just make it happen. You can make the phone calls, make the sale, make the transition, hire the right employee, fire the wrong employee, and make progress. But that doesn't mean your goals will be achieved. It is impossible for you to achieve that goal without a clear plan. A goal, write this down now and please remember this. And I know that you know it, but sometimes I remember the words of Truett Cathy, Chick-fil-A, who said, common sense isn't so common. Funny Truett Cathy story. His grandson was a college roommate of mine. And I knew his grandson for about 6 months before he said, hey, did I ever tell you that the guy that owns Chick-fil-A is my granddad? I'm like, no, you didn't tell me that. Why didn't you tell me that? He goes, I don't know. There's a college student for you, right? Not that that matters with anything that we're talking about. But Truett Cathy famously said, and he was known for saying, I wish common sense was more common. Just because it's common sense doesn't mean, that his Chick-fil-A employees knew it. So sometimes we have to remind ourselves of what's right in front of us. And we have to be disciplined to do something about it. A goal without a plan is destined to fail. A goal without a plan is destined to fail. And a plan without a clear path will always fail. Man, that just convicts me today with my own organization. It convicts me today for my coaching appointments later this afternoon. How can I help people clarify their goal, clarify their plan, and get it done? My buddy recently said with Ironman California, he was worried about this, worried about this, worried about this. And I just said, remember, follow the plan. Just follow the plan and you'll be ready. Element number three is this. You might think you have a plan because you're making progress. This is interesting, isn't it? I have had plans and then progress and eventually realize that they're not lining up. Just because you're making progress doesn't mean that your plan's working. It doesn't even mean you have a plan. You might think you have a plan because you're making progress. So, when profits are higher than expenses, life is good, right? When the positive comments, the 5-star reviews are more than the negative emails, life is good. When the culture of the team and the employees are positive and upbeat, life is good. Progress will fool us. And I mean progress on culture, progress on sales, progress on team, progress on development. Just because there's progress doesn't mean you're heading in the right direction. Now, that takes extreme discipline, especially when things are good. Extreme discipline to go time out. Are we heading in the right direction? I mean, I like you and sales are great and things are up and to the right, but I don't know if we're heading in the right direction. So don't be fooled. Don't be fooled that progress equates with having the right plan. Don't be fooled. I decided today to stick with the same analogy of endurance sport because I am careful to use client experiences. Obviously, when you share a client business story, you have to change names and details, but I am careful. I thought about a few examples here, but I decided to use this example. This is mile 12 of the Boston Marathon, as the sign says in Wellesley, Mass. Just earlier this year, I got to run the Boston Marathon. But if you look carefully in the bottom left of this picture, this guy named Joe, friend of mine. Joe years ago was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and who's not pictured just behind me is a guy named Jamie Bryson, one of my very best friends, who also has Parkinson's disease. Jamie started an organization called the Parkinson's Fight Club. And the mantra in the Parkinson's Fight Club is no whining. no whining. And so he started this to say, we're not going to get together and weep and moan and wail about our disease. We're not going to complain. We're going to live our lives to the fullest. We're going to live as if we are beating Parkinson's, not that Parkinson's is beating us. Well, the joy of this day for me is that there were a group of Parkinson's um, diseased athletes that asked to have support runners. And they are allowed to do that in some of the big world races like the Boston Marathon. And so I had the joy of being a support runner for Jamie. And a buddy of mine named Aaron had the joy of being a support runner for Joe. And there's a few other athletes in here. But Joe started to struggle. You might see a little bit of his body language and how he is pictured right there. But Joe began to struggle at mile 12. And keep this principle in mind, making progress. Every mile that you see at mile 12, boom, mile 13, mile 14, mile 15, just because I wanted to take pictures and we were running a little bit slower that day. Or just taking pictures of every mile. We're making progress, making progress, making progress, making progress. And you feel good. I don't know if you've ever done a race or a hike or whatever it is. You're like, oh, another mile. Progress is stinking amazing. Speaking of dopamine, Parkinson's is a dopamine deficiency in the brain. And the dopamine hit of hitting that mile marker is like, oh, we did it. Oh, we did it. Oh, we did it. It's energetic. It's fun. Well, as every mile got on, my optimism is like, we're doing it. We're doing it. We're doing it. But yet, um, not so with Joe. He started to struggle a little bit. His attitude stayed really positive. But the struggle with endurance sport always is managing sugar, salt, fat, energy, muscle, right? So you have to manage all those things. For Parkinson's patients, they got to manage all that plus the burn off of their medicine rate. And so depending on the heat that day, depending on what their body's doing, depending on their protein levels, if your body burns off your medicine too quickly with anything, then you need more medicine. But if you take too much medicine, you're in trouble too. So not only do patients of Parkinson's have the daily struggle of medicine and the balance of that medicine, but too much or too little, especially while you're doing an endurance sport, is extremely, extremely difficult and extremely dangerous. Guys, by mile 26, Joe was barely moving. And I'll never forget in his form of his body how it began to really struggle, how he basically looked like he was crawling. He actually fell on mile 26, crawling across the finish line, tears running down my eyes watching him. Now, the interesting thing about this analogy is that he made progress continually, but he had no idea until the very end that it was his medicine that was causing the problem. And at that point, it's too late. If you get dehydrated, you can't sip on some water and fix hydration. It takes time. Listen, and the reality is just because you're making progress, listen, this is so true. It does not mean that you have the right plan. We're making progress, and I'm excited about the progress, right? Go, 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 each mile, each mile, each mile. But it doesn't mean it's the right plan. And at the end of it, he was debriefing. He said, man, I think I had the right medicine levels through mile 13. I think I had the right medicine level through mile 13, but the rest of it went downhill. Just the rest of it went downhill. Progress can be deceiving because as long as we are accomplishing the to-do list, as long as we're responding to the phone calls, as long as we're meeting our sales quota, fill in the blank for the nature of your work, as long as we're meeting client demands, none of that means it's the right plan. You can finish a marathon and go, that was the wrong plan. Jamie finished it and said, I had a good plan. Another friend that had Parkinson's finished it and crushed it. He had a PR, a personal record that day. But Joe, right there in the blue shirt, he said, I got the wrong plan. They all went 26.2 miles. Joe did not have the right plan at all. But he didn't know it until he started to suffer. So too with me and you. Just because you're making progress does not mean that you have the right plan. Element number 4, you might think you have a plan. I love this one because you got a plan. The nonprofit I met with last night, I don't have an envelope here beside me, but I'll grab a little book here just in case. She said she was on screen because they were at a different location than me here in my home in Vermont. She goes, here's the last plan that we did. And she kind of joked. It was like 3 years ago. It was like the early part of 2022. I said, "Can I ask you a question about that plan?" She was holding up an envelope with a plan. "Can I ask you a question about that plan? How'd it work for you?" She said, and this is the owner or nonprofit leader, president, I think is her role. She goes, "I don't even know what's in it." Hmm, I'm guilty. I'm not looking at you because this is a webinar, but you could raise your hand and say, "I'm guilty." We write down a plan, we write down a to-do list, and we think this is going to move us forward. And sometimes we actually act on that plan, but it either goes on a shelf, goes into an envelope. For Stratop, our work that we do, we have a digital platform. And so if you work with the Barzell group, your plan goes on a digital platform. You go log in and look at the plan, change the plan, edit the plan. Just because you have a plan doesn't mean it's going to be a plan. You're like, "Well, we got a plan." Well, does it work? How are you working the plan? This is so challenging. Here's the 6 stage strat process that we lead. And the reason I'm showing you this is because I'm going to show you where most plans die. Now, every organization is different. Every leadership team is different. Every case study is unique. But our process, we begin with perspective there on the top. Can we hit pause for a few days and we zoom out and we say, "Can we look at this the right way?" We ask the right questions at the right time with the right people in the room, which leads us to an answer. And so instead of jumping to a plan, we try to gain the right perspective. We do a lot of zooming out. And we do that in a powerful way. But then we say, "All right, based on our reality, based on our customer, based on where we are today, where are we headed? What does this look like in the future? Let's describe the future. Let's be clear about the future. Let's dream a little bit. And we did that last night with this organization. It was a lot of fun. Let's plan a little bit. What does this look like tomorrow? What does it look like tomorrow, a month from now, tomorrow, a year from now, 5 years from now? What's the plan? And then, all right, we got this plan on the page. We got this plan in a notebook. We got this plan on a digital platform, or maybe you use Google Shared Docs. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the platform. It's go time. And then we begin to take action on that plan. But without the management, I'm jumping on the other side of the screen here, right? And without the management of that plan, it fails. Somewhere between action and structure, it just begins to fade off. Here's what happens: energy, momentum, strategic, strategic shift, and then management die off. We got a plan. We describe the future. We talk about who's going to do it. We talk about goals. We talk about deliverables. We talk about teams. And then, because of a lack of accountability, we lose momentum. Because of a lack of management, we lose momentum. Because it was a 2-day offsite where you developed a pretty plan and then it didn't even make the agenda of your next meeting. That's mind blowing to me. I remember working in organizations going, "Hey, are we going to talk about what we talked about last week at the retreat? Do you remember what happened last week? We said that we were going to, or are we going to follow up on that?" The management just falls apart. The management of the plan falls apart. And so remember, just because you have a plan doesn't mean it's actually going to work. So, what does it look like to have a plan and actually make sure you take the right action? Well, 3 things here I would say: you need the right structure. If it's not organized properly, it will fail. Within structure is organizational design. Within structure is accountability. Accountability also is linked to management. The management of that plan is often where it dies. People have the right intentions, not the right discipline, so it fails. People have the right heart and energy and momentum, but they lack the accountability. They lack the teamwork. Or maybe some of the first few things that we mentioned in this webinar today, you and or your team is guilty of. There's clarity here, but not clarity among the team. There was clarity in thought, but not clarity in action. Clarity in idea, but not clarity in practice. And now I'm just throwing those things out because it really does depend. But man, how do we make sure we are aligned? Plans do not self-execute. You ever had a to-do list? I like digital, by the way, but I gotta tell you, I like pen and paper right in front of me, which is why I grabbed this. I love this. It's just a journal. I like pen and paper. And I do get that dopamine hit from writing something down and then scratching it out. Man, I love it. But that doesn't happen unless I do it. It doesn't happen unless I do it. And in personal world, I don't always do it, much less team world. Team. Team requires, if there's six people on a team, let's go basketball. If there's five people on a team, oh my goodness, if you got one dud, it's like playing 4 on 5. You're going to lose. Even in the solo sports like golf, I'm just going to use sporting analogies today. Even in solo sports like golf, when they win a tournament, who are they thanking? Their caddy, right? Their team, their spouse, their children, their parents, their coaches, not just one coach, their coaches, right? It takes a team. Unless everyone does their part, we fail. They don't self-execute. What happens after the plan is what tests the plan. There's a few things I want to give you today. One is a quick diagnostic. We said that we would offer this quick diagnostic. Now, even though these are two questions, the diagnostic is not some fancy tool that's going to spit out a number. The diagnostic is not like a computer test if something's wrong with your card. And today they plug in a computer and they say, oh, something's wrong with your filtration system or something is wrong with your thermostat. The quick diagnostic being the Socratic method that we use by questions. I get two questions that you will actually need to not answer by yourself, but answer with your team. Are we aligned across the board? That you can't say yes because you're just you. I'm on the same page with Jason a lot. By the way, that's my name. I mean, come on. I'm on the same page. Like, I know what I think. I don't know if you know what I think. My wife literally came to me this morning. She said, did you and I talk about? And I said, yeah, we talked about that. She goes, I don't think we did. Josiah, my son, told me. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Right? I was clear. She wasn't. That's just normal human stuff. And so the diagnostic is to say, hey, can we talk about this? So you go into a room and say, hey, we made a plan to make sure we address a new quarter 3 strategy. Let's get on the same page. Let's go around the room and let's talk about our understanding of this plan. I want to hear from everybody. Ask the question. Are we aligned? Are we on the same page? What do you think about this? And then the second quick diagnostic for you is our progress fully aligned with our plan. What you're asking the room is the does the activity match the vision? And that is so common that the activity doesn't line up with the plan. In the triathlete world, swim, bike, run, it's important to cross train. But cross training doesn't necessarily mean that downhill skiing is going to serve you. Does downhill skiing prepare you for cycling? Not necessarily. It's tough on the quads, but that's a different sport. Does the progress and the activity line up with the plan? Have you ever felt like you were wasting time doing your job? You're doing your job, you're checking things off the paper, right? Come on, I'm gonna show you my paper again. You're checking things off the paper. I get a dopamine hit from clearing out my inbox. Can I get an amen from somebody? I mean, listen, I love clearing out the inbox. But just because I'm answering emails doesn't mean I'm making business progress. It just means one thing. I'm answering emails. That's all it means. And so ask this question, hey, does our progress slash activity, does it align with our plan? And someone says, no, I don't even have time for the plan. I literally have done strategic planning for organizations where eventually the owner of the organization says, I'm so busy, I didn't get to it. Really? How are you so busy that you're actually not working on the business? Well, I know, because I'm guilty of it. I'm not judging anybody. I'm not throwing stones. I'm not throwing darts. Me too. I've been so busy. Some days Rachel's like, how was work? I'm like, oh, it was awesome because I made progress. And some days I'm like, it was busy, but I didn't get anything done. So ask this question. Does the progress line up with the plan? And you're always going to have elements of number one, where people are going to say no because they're human. And number two, they're going to say no. Then you got to find the problem areas. And then a leader responds by solving the problems that exist. Seth Godin years ago, I remember at a conference said, leaders solve problems. That's what we do. I think there's so much more to leadership, but that's a good principle. 4 common breakdowns I want to share with you. 4 most common breakdowns, because you might say, okay, I see the problem, but why? I see the problem, but how? I see the problem, but what do I do? I see the problem, but what now? All right, here are the four most common breakdowns that I see. There are more. I struggled to choose four, but here's four big ones, okay? Number one, the plan's a one-hit wonder. Oh man, one-hit wonder. You go to the conference and you say, we're going to. You hire a strategic planning organization to come alongside and help, and it becomes a 2-day event. It's a one-hit wonder. Or you have an incredible internal meeting and you go, yeah, let's do that, whatever that is. But then that loses steam. That loses accountability. Number two, the plan is no accountability. I was meeting with an organization last week, and on Monday I said, hey, last week we said we were going to follow up on three elements. So, Seth, what do you got for us? I didn't do it. Kyle, what do you got for us? I'm just using those names, okay? Oh, I didn't do it. And then you say, Sarah, you own the marketing. I didn't do it, right? But when there's accountability, it's different. If you're able to say, hey, listen, next week, Kyle's going to present on the following. Kyle's going to present, and there's accountability. So the common breakdown in the plan is that there's no accountability. The struggle with Ironman, by the way, is it can be a solo sport, but without a coach, who's going to hold you accountable? Which is why I often will do races with other people so we can hold one another accountable to our plan. Hey, did you get your cycle in? I did. Did you get your run in? I did. When I go swimming locally, I invite a buddy of mine to join me. We need accountability to see progress. And if that's not built in your organization, you, can I just fly through something real quick? It'll fail. A clear path always involves other people, always involves accountability. In fact, to do those events that I did right there, I needed a tremendous amount of help and accountability. Number three, it's not clear. I have seen strategic plans. I recently saw one from a bank, and I said, can I see that plan? And I didn't understand a thing that thing said. And it wasn't because I'm not a banking expert. It was because it just wasn't clear. Some of the things in the banking world with FDIC regulations and local and state and federal, government constraints, I don't understand, but that's fine. But the plan was very much vision related, very much idea related, and it just wasn't clear. You should be able to give any plan to anybody, and if it's clear, they understand it. If I handed you a plan to train for an Ironman triathlon, you should be able to understand it. Today, run for 30 minutes at a 10-minute pace. Okay. It's not go for a run. That's not clear. It's run for 30 minutes at a 10-minute pace. Obvious, right? But I wish common sense was more obvious. Plans often lack clarity. I would say, I don't have a hard data on this in my own personal experience. I'd say about 75% of the plans that I read, I have more questions than I do answers. Number four, the plan has no effective management rhythm. The one hit wonder is strongly linked to the plan has no effective management rhythm. Oh gosh, this is so funny. Not funny at all, but in our organization, when we come alongside teams, we'll say, hey, listen, I'm going to follow up with you in 1 month. But between that month, we want to hit these goals and these deliverables. But in between now and that month follow up, if you guys don't talk about it, hello. So do make sure, please add the planning to your staff meetings, add the planning to your morning check ins. And you would be shocked. In some organizations, they come up with a plan and they just trust everybody to go work their plan. And then a month from now, they're like, hey, did you do it? No, they didn't do it. They didn't do it, right? So you have to have a management rhythm to build it into your morning meetings, build it into your daily conversations, build it into your staff meetings. You need to build it in. Here's a quick construct that I want to leave you with today. A quick construct, and this is a construct slash idea because it's not an exercise necessarily. We have tons of exercises that we do within our organizations that will serve organizations with, but this is a construct of steps that you can take. Okay, pretty obvious, but I want to make sure that it's not so obvious because very few organizations will do this effectively. The number one is create a clear. I just mentioned clarity. Just because it's like do this and do this and do that doesn't mean there's clarity. This also has to be so concise. It can't be so long that it's overwhelming. I literally have talked to organizations when I say, tell me about the plan, they're just overwhelmed because it's not concise. It doesn't need to be this 5-year vision with 45 pages of hopes and goals. I've seen some strategic plans. Can you see me? They're like papers are like an inch thick. I'm like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. I love strategic planning, but this overwhelms me. Make it clear, make it concise. Review the plan on a regular basis. This really goes back to the effective management rhythm. If it's out of sight, it is out of mind. Just around the corner from my home office, I have a home gym. In that little home gym, I have an area about the size of that picture right there. That's a chalkboard, and I have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday plan. It's in chalk, and I write that plan for my fitness goal and regime. And every day when I go to the gym, when it's my time, in fact, I'm going to exercise right after this. Okay, 1 o'clock today. I got 1 hour. I'm going to look at that plan, and I'm going to do exactly what's on the wall. Obvious, right? But it requires discipline. And it required me to write a plan and to put it on the wall and to hold myself accountable. Hold everyone accountable. Number three, to the plan. Now, no one's holding me accountable. I'm putting my workout in today. All right, that's just an individual example. But guess what? If you're on a team, you have a job to hold everyone accountable. I don't know what your role is in the team and organization, but even if you're not the leader and or the boss, you have a job for accountability. Now, how to do that requires some coaching, some learning. But if you're the boss, hey, listen, it's your job to say, listen, how are we doing? Coaches, a great coach holds the team accountable. In fact, with my sons, who are teenage sons, they need accountability. Hello, any parent of teenagers out there? And I will often use the sporting analogy. Hey, listen, I know that you're going to be bugged that I say this, but I got to hold you accountable to a high standard. But you know what a great coach wants? A great coach wants the teammates to hold one another accountable. After a football win, you hear the football coach, yeah, we have leadership. The leaders are stepping up. The seniors are holding everyone accountable. We got leaders that are rookies, leaders that are freshmen. It's everyone holding one another accountable. That requires a culture shift. It requires courage, and it also requires, and there's so much around culture that requires, it requires permission from the leader. Hey, let's challenge one another. How can we do better? Hold everyone accountable to the plan. Now, if you're not in charge, that's challenging, but there are ways to do it. In fact, there's a book focused more on nonprofits and churches than businesses, but it's called Leading from the Second Chair. So if you're not the one in charge, look, I'm not the one in charge. I don't want to step on toes. It's not my place. How do you lead when you're not in charge? A lot of good resources on that. And four, adjust the plan often. Sometimes it's really powerful to walk into the room and say, is this the right plan? If not, let's scratch it. Let's stop beating our heads against the wall. Let's stop being frustrated and let's change it. That goes back to effective management rhythm. If you're in manage it, you're saying what's right. We ask these 4 core questions in StratUp and our organization. What's right? How do we optimize it? What's wrong? How do we fix it? What's confusing? How do we clarify it? And what's missing? How do we add that in? What's right? What's wrong? What's missing? What's confusing? If there's not an effective management rhythm of evaluation, you can't make any changes. You can't bring the adjustment. It's going in football, it's going to the film room. It's going to the film room. I can't imagine how poor a team would be without watching film. Last weekend, I played a round of golf with a few buddies, and I have two good buddies. One guy I'd never met before. He's a pretty good golfer. I called him a good golfer. He called me a good golfer, and I'm like, we're making each other feel better about ourselves because neither of us are very good. But I took a slow mo of him because I saw something in his swing that was really good, and also something he could adjust. But I'm not that guy to go on the golf course. Hey, can I make a recommendation to you? I'm not that guy. I said, dude, I'm gonna take a slow mo of you. He goes, you know what's funny? I've never seen myself swing. I'm like, you'll like what you see. I took a slow mo of him of a certain angle so he could see a certain shoulder dip too soon. And I showed him the video. You know what he said? He goes, whoa, that looks cool. Because it did. He has a good golf swing. He's a pretty good golfer. He says, interesting that my shoulder dip. And I said, I noticed that too. Like when you evaluate, you have a chance. If you don't evaluate, you don't got a fighting chance. All right. This is the ending of our webinar. Listen, we want to help you. Our website's thebarzellgroup.com. This is here for you. This is here to encourage you. It's obviously free. That's my personal cell phone number, and there's my email. That QR code goes to our website. And also, if you would like to book a free coaching call, we'd love to offer that to you. I'd personally love to offer that to you. Our organization does four things primarily. Number one, strategic planning. Number two, life planning. Imagine having a strategic plan for your life planning, and then executive coaching and team coaching. Those are the four offerings that we do. So scan the QR code. We would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for being a part of our webinar today. What a joy to chat with you. If you have any questions, I would love to meet you again. You know my email. You know how to reach out. Look forward to talking with you soon. Thanks again for being a part of our webinar, and we wish you the best.